Okay, the Nasdaq 100, the S&P 500, as you can see, this was our key level that we had marked out. It was also mentioned in the newsletter around 17.6. You opened up the day, hit that level, and you kind of just consolidated to the downside all day long. You have a little bit of support kind of sitting right here, roughly around 17.4 to 7, yeah, basically 17.4 flat, and that's kind of where they're, kind of held you out all day long. You go into something like SPY, and I think things get even kind of uglier. And so when you look at SPY, and when I mean ugly, I mean just terrible type of trading action, just consolidating on support, your previous high here from Friday. You're clearly just holding supports. Now, what constitutes a bull trend is higher highs and higher lows, so just trending to the upside like this. And you're still doing that, right? You're clearly still doing that. You're holding previous highs. There's nothing really to be worried about here. Now, there is one area, and this is the most exciting part of the day, and I'm jumping right to it, IWM, the Russell. You saw small and mid caps get the most love today. Now, we've talked about the concerns here, right? We talked a lot about your concerns. But one thing that we have mentioned is the ability to hold the 200 weekly moving average on the IWM Russell. That's huge. Holding that and then breaking back up with, some force. You're getting above some levels. You want to get back above this little bit of level at 197, but ultimately get back above 200. If that happens, we know what happened before. A lot of momentum shifted to the Nasdaq and the rest of the market, and we saw a lot of upside. So could we be beginning to see what we saw in early December? Now, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I do want to say this is some good news, right? This is actually kind of exciting. Now, we did point out on Twitter yesterday that 76% of Mondays over the past year have ended green, and today was another one of those. So that stat just keeps on churning to the upside. But what I will say here is that IWM getting the party started is very interesting. Now, this week, the most important thing that you're going to have out there are your earnings. You have Netflix earnings tomorrow. You have Tesla the day after. You have IBM the day after that. You have LRCX, and I think you even have Intel. So things are starting to heat up, and then next week you have Microsoft, Apple, Meta, so the works. Right, that's going to be a big week next week as well. So when we look across the board, seeing IWM get involved definitely should get you excited, especially with what's coming with these earnings. And then next Wednesday, just to let you, not this Wednesday, next Wednesday is your FOMC meeting, which your last rate decision for the next 60 days, give or take. So again, really exciting stuff, things you need to be paying attention to, and could really set this off for the next month or so. Definitely worth mentioning. Before we get too excited, we got to take a look at DXY and what's happening there. We go to the 4-hour chart. And as we mentioned on Friday and last week, you are rejecting your 200 moving average, right? You've got some days where you try to hold and you get rejected, right? You go to the daily, as you can see here, it's just nothing but rejections. You could argue you're trying to flag, but again, this is coming right out with what's happening next week. We have our earnings this week, then we have our FOMC next week. And again, what's going to be the biggest impact on the dollar? What's going to be the biggest impact on the 30-year yield? It's going to be the Fed. So again, this makes sense that you're consolidating, you're at resistance, and you're not able to push above it just yet. But what I will say is despite the yields and DXY being at resistance and pushing up really strong over the past month or so, well, guess what, guys? The Qs are they're at all-time highs. SPY, all-time highs. Potentially a treacherous candle that kind of formed here. But what I will say is you're still mounted above, previous highs. And so the trend has to continue, just looking what's happened from a technical viewpoint. Even here on Dow, you're getting what you want to see. We talked about, you want to see a break and a mount of this level. You go to the 2-hour chart, you can see what's happening right here, a break, getting a retest. You can look here, zoom in really quick. As you can see there, you're holding that level now. So again, these are good signs. I love the Nasdaq as much as the next guy. I love tech names. That's where I make most of my money. But when I look at the broad market, you have to, slow down for a second and you take a look at everything, right? Smell the roses, right? And everything's looking good, right? Everything's looking very, very good. Again, you came into resistance here on ES, and so it's not surprising that as we're coming into resistance here on ES and NQ that we're slowing down. But what's even more impressive is that we're not getting rejected that hard. Now, really quick, let's look at a little bit of data here. Now, this is one of our sponsors here on the channel as well. We know Andre, really cool product. He was a trader just like me and you, and basically he just created algorithms based on different pieces of data, and so we can look at volume in a better perspective, right? So the big thing that we looked at yesterday was price action, and I posted this on Twitter, and what was happening there, right? And so you can go look at performance trends, I believe is what we looked at, right? So you can look at a bunch of different things here and what's kind of happening, right? So 70% of your Mondays typically end green, 45% of Tuesdays typically are green, or so 55% are red, which is your most bearish day typically, looking at the stats there as well. So worth mentioning, worth looking at. You also have data on FOMC we'll look more at as well. But I just want to highlight what's happening here. So even though Mondays are our greenest days, I want you guys to look at something that kind of plays out here. And this is what I was looking at right here. Volume, your average volume. Your average volume ticks up significantly throughout the week. Okay, so when we go over and we look at the volume here on the day at something like SPY and we zoom in here, right, you still had decent volume here. Okay, I want this to be a highlight. 68 million. So when we go back to this data and we look at what's happening here, when I look at this, I anticipate volume to continue tracking up and to follow kind of this structure and trend that's at play here, right? Check out the link is down below, so make sure you check them out. But again, if this is any type of foreshadowing, this could be really interesting looking at what's happening. Like last week, you had good volume on Monday, and then we saw some breakout volume in the week. So this could be a foreshadowing of getting some really nice volume. And it would make sense as well going into FOMC next week also. Now, again, I don't want to say that one thing is going to dictate the way the market's going to move, okay? But when we look at that data, it definitely gives me a little bit of intrigue looking at the market, okay? Because this week especially, I do think we are a little bit at a pivot point, okay? I think if earnings go bad, I think we could start to drop quick. I'm just going to say it. Okay, earnings have kind of held us up. We've also had, what's happening with GDP, lowered inflation across. Things have been working out in our favor. When things started to slightly not go our way beginning of the year, we saw sellers step in aggressively. So I will say sellers are looking for their chance. They're begging for their chance. They just haven't really got a good one, right? We knew what we had to look out for, and that those things kind of came back into play and pushed us back up. So again, I think you definitely need to keep your head on a swivel going through some of these earnings. Netflix, Tesla, IBM, Intel, LRCX, those are big names, right? Those are foreshadowing names of what's coming next week and the week after that with AMD, NVIDIA, weeks down the line, and then Apple, Meta, Google next week. Those are big names. So again, keep your head on a swivel. Be watching what's happening here, but don't just get blind or, like a horse where you're just looking at one viewpoint. Well, this has to happen. I will say, just because volume is upticking doesn't mean that we have to continue ripping to the upside. Although price discovery, it's a beautiful place. I love it here, dare I say. But what I will say is that you could easily start to pull back based on how we've moved up to the upside. We've created some pretty big illiquid zones, and that has become an issue over the past few weeks when we saw some of that pullback as well. So don't forget what happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. Keep your head on a swivel, keep your trade plan aligned, and start attacking that trade plan. And when your trade plan starts to deviate or things don't go your way, take a step back. That's my biggest tip that I can tell you right now. Now, really quickly, we're going to go over a few names and what I'm looking at here. Now, what's happening specifically on NVIDIA? Now, what I wanted to see was a kind of a push and pull over 600 in amount. You can never hold that level on the 15, much less the 5-minute. So you never really got that type of action here. In the after hours are kind of at 596. But what I'm really looking at here too is like your previous high and what was happening here. So this was a level that I was watching right here. And you saw almost a perfect bounce of 591, 592, and you held that in really well. Okay, and NVIDIA all day long, all things considered, even with the pullback, it held up really strong. So NVIDIA, if you're looking above 600, I think you mount, you could push up really nice. Still think it's a strong name. Okay, and then also, there's a lot of small caps that are getting my attention now also, so we'll go over those in a second. Meta, you didn't get what we wanted, right? So this is a great example of a trade that just went bad. Okay, so Meta, you gapped above this, right? Now, what we were looking for was a push, retest, and then a bounce. That's what we wanted in a perfect, beautiful world, right? Now you bounce, and then you kind of just lose this level. Once you lose the level, it's done. Get out of it. You're gazpacho, right? I set stops on my little scalps, like right there at lows of the day. You broke below the end, right? And then you can't get this level. So on Meta now, I'm looking to see if you're going to hold this little bit of a quote-unquote demand potentially here, or if you're going to get back above this level, or you're going to come back down 377. But right now, you're kind of in a no trade zone. You got to watch and see what happens here. The best trade is back over 384. Back over that, it's like Microsoft and could run back at all-time highs. I still love Meta in the long term. I think it has a lot of room to run. Microsoft reminds me a little bit of NVIDIA here, okay? You're just trending at highs. You saw the push in like 402, but you're basically just trending in between like 395 and like 398. You're just sitting here, relaxing, chilling, waiting for good news to come so you can just break out. Okay, now you also have a lot of these key levels, your previous highs here, here, and here. So again, Microsoft, super strong. You're kind of just waiting to see what happens. If we start to break structure and start to push down, then again, you're just trading these zones and watching that play out again and again and again. Very easy to trade these types of structures. So again, you have clear precise levels. It's really, really simple here. Apple, congratulations on this one, guys. It's been an absolute monster, and I think it's going to continue to be one. So again, if you don't know, the Apple Vision Pro, I think they sold 80,000 on day one. They upped their target to sell, I think, 400 to 500,000 this coming year. But now it's announced that they've sold at least 200,000 of the new Vision Pros. That's a monster, like in like over a weekend. That's crazy. So I think Vision Pro could be a success if the numbers come out well on the earnings and could really start to push Apple into highs. Again, you look at this little bit of a level, like 194, 195, you're hitting it right now. You get above this level, you're probably pushing back into all-time highs. I'm just going to tell you that right now. That is what I'd be looking at there. Apple still looks good. But again, you did fill your gap like we mentioned right here at 191, 192. So if you start to fall, this is illiquid now. This whole level basically all the way down to here, basically into 188 is now illiquid. So if sellers step in, this could push down quick. So that's why you want to wait to see if you're going to mount that level there. So you want to get that test, retest, and boom, push to the upside. In a perfect world, that is what I would be looking for. Now, Tesla, everyone knows and loves this name. You all adore it, and for some reason, everyone on social media wants to go long. Again, it is the worst long opportunity on my board right now. I'm not going to lie to you. Again, what you're looking for on Tesla to go long is to mount the 200 weekly, this bold yellow line right here. When you mount it, when you've lost it and you mount it, look at your volatility. You've went from 180 into 276 right here. You broke and mounted it back last February. You went from 166 to 220. You broke it here and mounted. You broke, retested, mounted. You went from 208 to 250 almost. So that is exactly what I'd be looking for there. The same story overall. But yeah, so that's what I'm looking for. If you mount that, the 218, 219 level, then I'd go long. But while you're below this, I think it's the weakest name. I also think their earnings could miss tragically. I also am really concerned about the Cybertruck and what's happening there. But I'm not like going short or anything right now. If I'm day trading, I like to use it short to protect myself on the long side of other names. You came down to your key level of around 206 right there. You bounced. If you get below 206, this could get ugly quick. You could start pushing down to 198 and things could get really, really, really ugly. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, so again, levels I'd be watching on Tesla, if you get below 206, around 202.5, and then down towards 194, and then you have a 198 level here as well. So again, Tesla downside looks pretty likely. Boeing had more bad news on the day, but again, I mentioned about Boeing that you were kind of bouncing across the board on some names in the previous video, but Boeing might be giving you that opportunity. I kind of draw this a little bit of a double top that I was kind of maybe expecting to play out. If you go watch the previous video, you had a gap fill right there also. So a few things here. You did fill that gap. Awesome. That's out of the way. We look back here also. You want to see a hold below the 200 moving average right here at 214.3. Now, I don't know if you're going to get a double top, push up and push back down. That's just ridiculous, impossible to guess. However, I still think Boeing is pretty weak. The Dow is pushing all-time highs, so it's hard to trade right now. So I'm not just forcing shorts. The biggest short I like is still Tesla, if I had to short anything. But again, that's where we're at right now. If you hold below the 200 SMA, you could push back down into 208, 206, and then you have your 200 SMA on the weekly down here as well, 195. So yeah, and this level down below 209 is pretty illiquid, basically until you get to 204 and start dropping even more. So that's what I'm liking there also. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting any names. Crypto names, I kind of hate them as well. But again, if you've been following on the channel, we said around 116, and I was off by $1. You didn't get that 116 touch, but you hit that like 117, bounce back up to 132, and you still look weak. I think Coinbase is going to continue to come down. Bitcoin is just getting hurt. You lost 40K, so it looks like sellers are stepping back into coin. That's what it looks like personally to me. So all Bitcoin stocks look like they want to just continue on the downside. So that's what I'm watching there when it comes to stocks and equities overall. Now, I do want to say stuff that hasn't made the video today, and I just don't want to talk about it yet. I don't want to jinx it, and I just don't want to like waste any time. Mid caps, okay? Like number one, PayPal. You're trying to mount the 200 SMA on the daily, monster level. Looks good. Finally, you guys asked about PayPal forever. Finally looks good. Now no one wants to ask about it. You have other names like Upstart, Affirm. I can go on Carvana, Zillow. All the names we mentioned before are bouncing back to the upside with IWM. Okay, so if this continues, if earnings go well, you could see IWM really start to mount 200 and things could get really strong, especially when you look at the weekly and daily and how you potentially just put in a higher low on larger timeframes. It's good news. So when I look across the board, I do like that overall. Okay, so I will say if I looked at everything as a whole, that I think things are pointing for more upside in the market. However, I can't anticipate what's going to happen with these earnings. The earnings that I'm most excited about definitely are Netflix, and I do think that they could beat. I want to say that right now. I like what Netflix is doing. I really think they have a lot of good stuff in the works. Most excited about them. Okay, I think that can go really, really well. I wouldn't trade their earnings, but I like them a lot. Tesla, not looking great. Don't think it's going to go that well. The rest, who knows? Intel probably beats, but still, that's what I'm looking at there. I encourage you guys, though, when you get action like this, just sit on your hands. Be patient. Like, I had high hopes for today. I had a clear plan. Things didn't work out. Took about a $200 loss on Meta. Basically it. Was done for the rest of the day. Understand when your trade plan isn't working, things aren't going well, just take a step back. It's okay. Guess what? You still got 4 more days in the week, and you still got 51 more weeks left in the year. Congratulations. Don't play yourself. Understand the name of the game is protect your capital at all times, and make sure you're putting yourself in the best position to win at all times as well. The Twitter link is down below. Like, subscribe, do what you gotta do. See you guys tomorrow. Have a good one, traders.